Hello, boys and girls. Welcome to this episode of The Invisible Critic in the sub-series, The Forbidden History of the Globalist Conspiracy. I am your host, The Invisible Critic from North New Jersey. We're going to pick up where we left off in a previous episode on Napoleon. Remember, at the end of the wars to destroy Napoleon, there came the Congress of Vienna, 1815. And one of the big takeaways from that conference, which remember now, this was Rothschild's conference because he paid for the defeat of Napoleon. So, he's getting some out of deal. He who writes the checks calls the shots. Big takeaway from Vienna was that the Jews was going to be emancipated. They were going to get more rights and access to more professions throughout Europe. So that came out of Vienna. Shortly after that, there was another sub-deal made between, this was set up by the Tsar of Russia, Alexander. It's called the Holy Alliance, and it's an alliance between Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Three empires, and they agreed that they're going to work together to suppress, radicalism and all these lefties and Jacobins that was working against their countries. The British was very opposed, and so was Rothschild. Because Rothschild ultimately he wanted all of Russia, all that vast territory, and he needed the British to kind of to pull that off for him. But this alliance also acted to thwart British ambitions. And the British were very much opposed to the Holy Alliance. And it is at that point that Rothschild, they turned their hatred towards the Tsar of Russia. That would continue for the next 100 years. 1816 to 1818, three of the five Rothschild sons are granted titles of nobility. Amschel in Frankfurt, which was part of the German Federation. Okay, Solomon in Austria, and Nathan in London. They get titles like De Rothschild, Von Rothschild, Sir Rothschild. These stupid idiot monarchs are granting them titles. The reason I say they're stupid is because the whole time, they're making money off of the wars, and they wanted to crush Napoleon. So the Rothschilds have their own agenda. They don't give a shit about these monarchs. To the contrary, they're working beneath ground. They fund all these radical leftist groups that work against the monarchies. So talk about being short-sighted. You're welcoming these Rothschilds into your strata of society. The whole time they're out to destroy you. We're going to go back to USA real quick, the Panic of 1819. You'll recall after the War of 1812, they put the second bank in the United States back in business, which was run out of London. Just 3 years later, that bank there was the second bank rechartered in 1816. 3 years later, big crash in 1819. A lot of people was ruined. It's the same old formula. You expand the money supply with easy loans. Everybody goes into debt. Everything booms. And then you make the loans difficult to obtain. You tighten the money supply so now people can't get their hands on the money. They need to pay their own loans. Everything crashes. It's very simple, the boom-bust cycle. Every single time. Every time there's a crash, it's preceded by monetary expansion, easy money, and then comes the tightening crash. Same year, 1819, we're back to Europe now. The Hep riots, these occurred throughout the German Federation, and what they were was an uprising against Jews. They were anti-Jewish riots because they didn't like this business that come out of the Congress of Vienna. People was scared that the Jews, just like they did in medieval times, was going to start taking over the financial sector and then taking over the universities, and they didn't want them getting this power. So that's what those riots were all about. And while the Germans was rioting, they'd say, hep, 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 hep. No one knows why they said that, but it is believed that the term hep, hep, hooray comes from hep, hep. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what a lot of people believe. That same year, 1819, and this is kind of related, there's something called the Carlsbad Decrees. Took place in Carlsbad, Bohemia. You see these people around a table here. They all got gags on their mouth so they can't talk. And what that cartoon is saying is that the Carlsbad Decrees restricted free speech on the universities because these governments, they had a lot of problem with all the radicalism. It was the same back then as it is today. It comes out of the university. Commie pinko professors brainwashing the kids and turning them into little revolutionaries. So that those decrees were meant to get the libtards out of the campuses. We could use those today. 2 years later, 1821, the Cato Street conspiracy in Great Britain. It was an attempt at a French-style revolution. They was going to kill the prime minister, these revolutionaries, and all the cabinet ministers. The plot was uncovered, and all the bosses were either imprisoned or executed. So it shows that the Reds were working in Britain too. And that's the Cato Street conspiracy. So, and again, there's a common theme. At the same time that they support the monarchs, talking about the Rothschilds and the one-worlders, they also, on the down low, will support the revolutionaries. Everything they cover all the bases. And at any given time, they can go one way or the other to suit the bigger picture. 1823, the United States declares the Monroe Doctrine, which means we don't want any more interference in our hemisphere. There's a message to Britain and other European countries. You can keep your colonies, but if you start any new interventions, we're going to consider that as a hostile act. 1825, the Panic of 1825, another crash, this time in England, and it affected other countries in Europe too. Same thing, easy money, everything's booming, and then you pull the money supply. Is such a simple scam to understand, and yet people don't understand why these crashes happen. But when that happened, guess who stepped in with a big bailout of Britain and the Bank of England? Rothschild, and the Rothschild branch in Paris too. So now they became even richer. They crash and then they buy everything up. That same year, 1825, the war against the Romanovs really starts to heat up. The Tsar Alexander, he had already survived a kidnapping attempt while he was traveling in Europe. And now a few years later, he's away from the capital of St. Petersburg. All of a sudden, he just gets sick and drops dead. He's only 47 years old. He was very healthy. A lot of people thought it was a conspiracy. They rubbed him out. Because this is the war, and this is going to happen for the next 100 years until they wipe out his great-great-grandsons, and they murder the whole family. That's Rothschild. I know it is. 1830, there's another revolution in France. Okay, after they took out Napoleon, they put a monarch back on the throne, and now they overthrew that monarchy too. This painting is titled, I'm sure you've seen this famous painting, 1830. Liberty Leading the People is what it's called. Now, like 40, 50 years after, the Statue of Liberty, okay, is modeled off of this. It's really an Illuminati symbol, liberty. And it's called, the statue's original name was Liberty Enlightening the World. Enlighten, illuminate, Illuminati, get it? So there's a symbol of her with her torch and the One World Trade Center with the pyramids in it. They put this right in your face, okay? But this is the further destabilization of France. They overthrow the monarch again. Charles X, he abdicates. And then they replace him with a new king, Louis Philippe. Only now the monarchy is getting weaker and weaker. And these revolutions, they serve a purpose. They go back and forth between a republic and a monarchy, and a monarchy. Constant destabilization is a big tactic of the New World Order crime gang. That same year, 1830. And these were not spontaneous revolutions. These are planned by underground conspirators. These were fake nationalist revolutions. The Belgian Revolution. They wanted to break away from the Kingdom of Holland. Okay? And why? Why do the Rothschilds and the One Worlders sometimes promote fake nationalism? Well, the idea is if you have a big empire, you tell the various groups of that empire, hey, don't you want your own country? And then you begin to split up that empire. And then you take the smaller country and you swallow it and you control it. And that's exactly what happened with Belgium. Because after the Belgian Revolution, look who steps in with a massive financing of the new country. Yeah, Nathan Rothschild of London. All right? I mean, this guy owns the freaking planet by now. He just bought up Belgium. And Belgium ever since has been a center of this international globalism. Indeed, you look today, what is the capital of the Communist European Union? Brussels. It's in Belgium. Belgium, they've always owned it. You go to World War I. Why did the Germans go into Belgium? Because Belgium pretended to be neutral, but they was going to let the British and the French march through Belgium into Germany. Same thing in World War II. So Belgium is a fake little country wholly owned by the globalists since it began with that revolution in 1830. There's another revolution in 1830. In Poland, they're trying to break away. It was part of Russia at the time. And now they're trying to break away Russia. This is really another attack against the Russian Empire. And I'm not saying that all these people who wanted their own countries was bad people. They had bad intentions. I'm talking about the big picture. This is fake nationalism aimed at breaking up these big empires. And there was also revolutionary movement in Switzerland, in Italy, Brazil, Portugal, all in 1830. Spontaneous. They're fake. They're like the fake color revolutions of today. these spontaneous mobs that come out of nowhere. No, it's Freemasons, Illuminati, they're behind it all. And, the coming century is just going to be one of continuous tumult and upheaval by design. It's the Rothschilds and the one-worlders who are behind us. So, that takes us up to the 1830s. Next episode, we're going to go back to America, same time period, and we're going to talk about Andrew Jackson, and how he killed Rothschild Central Bank in the United States, and it nearly got himself killed in the process. It is an amazing story. But until next time, like this video, please share it all over the place. This is your host, Invisible Critic, signing off.